Hey guys, I've been seeing some very concerning stuff regarding the United States and Venezuela. So it appears the Trump administration is looking for regime change with Venezuela. You could say whatever you want about the current president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. He probably wasn't duly elected last time, but that's not our job, really to get into other, countries' elections and stuff like that. But that's definitely what this government is doing. They're upset with that. They want to take oil and resources from Venezuela. Even though the weird part is Maduro's like, you could have whatever oil you want, just leave me alone. And Marco Rubio has it out for Maduro, so that's kind of the direction we're going. A few months ago, they started bombing boats, random boats coming from Venezuela. They just see a boat coming from Venezuela, they just assume it's carrying drugs because it's from Venezuela. I don't know if they actually assume that, but that's what they're saying publicly. In addition to that, the U.S. military has moved all sorts of resources to the Caribbean near Venezuela, such as aircraft carriers and all the supply vessels that come along with that. So we've already spent a lot of money on posturing towards Venezuela, like we're gonna attack them or something. In addition to that, the Trump administration, Donald Trump today just said that Venezuela needs to close their airspace. So it sure seems like we're posturing to go to war with Venezuela, and this is not exciting stuff. So let's see what information we could gather on this and try to make our own conclusions on what may or may not happen in the near future.
Deaths, sources say. After an assessment, the military conducted the second strike that killed remaining crew on board and sunk the vessel. President Trump has announced a kinetic strike on September 2nd against narco-terrorists. He said we're with the group known as Tren de Aragua. One source claims U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth ordered the strike to kill everyone on board, but it is unclear if he knew there were survivors prior to the second strike. The Trump administration has never publicly acknowledged killing any survivors.
Now, this isn't really the kind of story we'd normally do, but
so what it seems like happened is they
After more than 20
hit this boat with a bomb,
boats.
and it essentially, they didn't kill everybody. So because the orders from the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth were to kill everybody, they sent another missile and made sure they killed everybody. So it's just, we're not at war with Venezuela. So where are these orders of just kill them? Like, that is, since when do we do that? That is why. If anything, you want to capture them so that we can get information from them. Like, hey, where do the drugs come from? Where are you going? Let's get some information. Instead, we're just bombing these boats. It's just absolutely wild. There's more.
President Trump is now making bold comments about what's next for Venezuela.
In recent weeks, you've been working to deter Venezuelan drug traffickers, of which there are many. Of course, there aren't too many coming in by sea anymore, if you probably noticed that. We've almost stopped. It's about 85% stopped by sea. You probably noticed that. People aren't wanting to be delivering by sea, and we'll be starting to stop them by land also.
By land. Let's bring in Ryan Berg. He's the head of Future Venezuela Initiative at the Center for Strategic International Studies. Ryan, the president there making it pretty clear.
When you hear him say we're going to stop them by land, what does that mean? Does that mean we're going to do airstrikes on land? Does that mean boots on the ground? What does that mean?
Where this is headed, but how do you see it unfolding?
Good morning, Griff. Great to be with you. Look, the president has said before that land strikes could be next in Venezuela. Yesterday, there were reports, unconfirmed still at this point, that the president and the dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, have already held a call that was last week. He's saying this week, once again, that land strikes are likely in Venezuela. So I imagine that call didn't go particularly well. And the Navy currently has about 30% of its deployed force in the southern Caribbean. So everything to me, Griff, tells me that we're trending in the direction of seeing land strikes on drug targets in Venezuela rather soon. And I imagine that call yesterday that was reported on, still unconfirmed, between President Trump and Nicolas Maduro didn't go particularly well. And I imagine it's because there's really not much to say to a guy who stole an election last year and refuses to leave office if he's not actually willing to leave office.
Well, and Ryan, you study this every day, so you fully understand the larger context of all this. These strikes started back at the beginning of September. They've continued, and as you point out, the Carrier Strike Group 12 is now in the Caribbean with the USS Gerald Ford, the largest carrier that we have. There's quite a bit of firepower there. But do you see the larger picture is ultimately hoping that Maduro will somehow just walk away before we have to move this into the direction of escalating it to
look at all those resources over there.
The call, if it did in fact happen, happen was likely to give Maduro this ultimatum, that exactly how you speak of it. This is your chance to negotiate your exit. If you don't negotiate your exit, we're going to escalate to land strikes. Again, 30% of the deployed force, the U.S. Navy in the southern.
Since when? Since when is it our responsibility to govern Venezuela's government? Like, if he did still an election or not, that is not our business. That is not for us to decide. I don't want to do that. I want health care. I want to be able to buy a house. I really don't care what's going on over in Venezuela.
Caribbean. It's a significant amount of firepower. And the moving of the USS Gerald R. Ford to the region, I think, is one of those crossing the Rubicon moments. You don't move a significant piece of equipment like that, a carrier strike group and her associated escorts, if you don't intend to put real options on the table, Griff, for the president to consider, which involve her use. So you could see land strikes against targets that are purely drug trafficking in nature, or you could see land strikes against targets that are at the heart of that state criminal nexus that we always talk about in Venezuela, the way that the Venezuelan armed forces help this criminal regime to move drugs.
Yeah, the Cartel del Soles, or Cartel of the Suns, they're named that because of the gold sun-like.
So the charge is that the Venezuelan government is facilitating, involved in the trafficking of drugs to the United States. And that's why they're bombing these boats, and that's why they want to take out Maduro. Because Maduro is trafficking drugs to the United States. That's the charge.
That the Venezuelan generals wear, they are being pointed to as being the leaders of that. Last question, I only got a few seconds, but we've had Marina Corina Machado, the opposition leader, on this show many times with my co-host Rachel Campbell-Stuffy. Do you believe that she could actually take over the country and bring Venezuela back to democracy?
I think it's a possibility, Griff. I think the theory of the case is that once you start hitting targets at that state criminal nexus, which implicate the Venezuelan armed forces, they could realize that the game is up, Griff, that their loyalty is not with Maduro any longer, but that the best chance that they have of survival is to actually get on the side of a democratic transition. And if that's the case, it's anybody's guess what happens. But the great thing here is we have a government in waiting. We have Maria Corina Machado. We have Edmundo González Urrutia. Venezuela had an election last year, and there's legitimacy there for the opposition ready to take over.
Well, and we will be following it very closely. Ryan Berg, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, that is essentially the plan. We're going to get rid of Maduro, and we're going to put in our guy, our U.S.-backed guy. Do you think that if you live in Venezuela, that's a good idea? That you're gonna be into that? No, they're not. And here's the main thing, is that they're saying essentially that we're doing this because Maduro is a drug trafficker, so that's why he has to get out of power. That's what they're saying. Well, what happened today is a funny story, really. So what happened is the president of Honduras was convicted of drug trafficking and sentenced to, I believe, 45 years in 2024 to prison. He surrendered himself to the United States, and he was in prison for drug trafficking. This is the Honduran president. Today, as it appears, let's let Today Show tell you what happened.
To check those headlines for you, President Trump said he plans to pardon the former leader of Honduras, who was found guilty last year of conspiring to import cocaine into the U.S. Former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez was convicted by a U.S. jury for drug trafficking and weapons charges, with prosecutors accusing him of taking bribes from the notorious drug cartel leader known as El Chapo. Hernandez was sentenced to 45 years in prison and has been serving time in a West Virginia prison. President Trump wrote on social media that Hernandez had been, quote, treated very harshly and unfairly.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget.
Are you fucking with me right now? Are you fucking with me right now? You're going to tell me that you're going to start this war with Venezuela because of the drug trafficking, and you're killing all these people and spending all this money because of drug trafficking, and you just pardon this guy from South America, or not South America, whatever, the Caribbean, for drug trafficking. Listen, if those Venezuelan boats had drugs on them, they were probably going to Honduras, like most likely, right? That they definitely weren't going to the United States because they can't make it that far. So they're probably going to. Either way, we're starting a war because of drug trafficking, but we're gonna go ahead and pardon this guy. This is why. Oh, get him, Trump. Get him, Trump. Keep us always guessing.